Are you ready?
We back. Man, it's been a long time coming. Let's go. And if you weren't watching, if you weren't listening, you might not have known.
You know what time it is. Lace them up and lock in. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the tip-off of Season 2 of the JWJ podcast. I'm Shane Thomas, joined by my guy, my shooter on the wing, Mr. James Washington. What's good, my boy?
Yeah, staying out the way.
Staying out the way. I hear that, bro.
No, for real.
Man, it's been a while, man. We're glad that we back, and we're ready to talk some hoops. Y'all down?
Listen, there's two things that were guaranteed to happen this year, man. James Harden would ask for a trade, and JWJ would make a comeback.
I hear that. Let's go.
All right.
Let's go. So, first order of business, if you guys are clicking this, you already know what we about to talk about. The Damian Lillard trade. He finally got out of Portland. Thank God. And he's headed to...
Bro. Funny stuff. I got to hit you with something real quick. I got it. Before we get into that, I just thought about something I got to tell you. If people were listening to season 1, they'll appreciate this. So I got to tell you a funny thing that happened to me on Saturday, right? And trust me, it's related in its own way. You'll know. And if anybody paid attention in season 1, you'll know. So baby girl taking swimming lessons, right? She goes on Saturday mornings. So Saturday, I get her up, get her dressed. I'm taking her to the pool. And I back out of the garage, right? And, you know, like my car has the backup camera, all that good stuff. So I'm backing out of the garage. As soon as I put the car in drive and go around the corner, I look down about a block later, bro. Why was my screen glitching again? So look, I'm driving and I look down and I'm like, why is my camera still showing what's behind me? So again, I can't touch my radio. Shane, car.
And you didn't die.
And I didn't.
You
die.
made it.
It was a
Look
very
at us.
Look at us. Look
As
how
a
we're
group,
living.
what we're doing.
Look how we're living. But
Season
luckily,
2 begins like season 1. Who would have thought?
The
reason that we're here is because James' car is up. There's nothing else we can do.
So luckily, we get to the lesson. We go in. It's only like half an hour. So we come out about 45 minutes later. And it was acting fine then. But as soon as that happened, I was like, yo, I'm not even going to tell him this happened. As soon as we hit record. Now I got to do the rest of the episode with tears in my eyes. I love it.
Oh, man. But look, man. So that's hilarious, bro. I was not ready. But
man.
Again, man, before we get started, I want to thank you guys for bearing with us. We had to, as we put out on social media, we talked about how, you know, we had to kind of put the pod on ice for a while. A lot of things in life came up. I'm living in a new place. I'm no longer in Georgia. I moved to Pennsylvania for a job. All the way, some 900 miles away, all the way up here in Pennsylvania. So we had to put it on ice, but we're prepared. We're ready to come back. We laced up. We locked in. So James, you know, the thing I wanted to get to, man, just to start out, man, like, you know, Damian Lillard, one of our favorite players. You know, he's headed to Milwaukee. He requested a trade. I think that was like our last episode was him requesting a trade to Miami.
Dame Dollar says holla.
And you know, Portland played hardball. But I mean, they probably put him in a better situation. I mean, if we're being honest. So he gets traded to the Milwaukee Bucks. That trade was made official September 27th. So Dame, 7-time All-Star, he was traded to the Milwaukee Bucks. It was a 3-team deal. In the deal, Portland received Jrue Holiday, DeAndre Ayton, Tumani Kamara. They also got Milwaukee's 2029 unprotected first-round draft pick and an unprotected swap rights with Milwaukee for 2028 and 2030. Phoenix was a part of this deal as well. They got Yusuf Nurkic, Grayson Allen, Nasir Little, and Keon Johnson as part of the package. As we'll get to later, Jrue Holiday did not report to Portland. He was shipped again. And it is juicy. I can't wait to discuss this further later in the pod, but he was shipped from Portland to Boston in exchange for Robert Williams and Malcolm Brogdon, sixth man of the year. So Portland also got a 2024 first from it was Golden State's pick, I believe, and then a 2029 first round pick in the deal. So James, the trade finally happened. We get Dame and Giannis teaming up in the East. Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts on that, bro?
Ooh, listen, so I'm gonna start with this. I gotta start with, that something to keep people leaning in, keep them hanging on. So I'm gonna throw a little teaser out there real quick. I will go as far as to say, and hear me, this isn't something that's by a long shot. I'm going to mess with everybody out there and say that in the weirdest way possible, Milwaukee to me is the only team that took anything in this that can be considered an L. I'm gonna throw that one out there. So
it's season 2, we got takes.
Oh, absolutely. And I have a very interesting theory that I'm going to throw out there after we discuss the team aspect of all of this. But if you think about it, like I said, and we'll go more, team by team later, I really think that every other team that was involved in this, Portland, Phoenix, eventually Boston, I think every other team that was involved actually improved on what they thought they were going to be. I don't think that any team in this, as crazy as it is, I think that this was probably as even a trade as we could have seen. I think that it went very well for every team involved. But like I said, we're going to discuss each team, more in detail. But just leading off my little teaser, I honestly think that Milwaukee is the only one that could possibly look back and be like, Yeah,
because I mean they didn't get potential. They got like a known commodity like right now.
Mm-hmm.
And that makes sense for them because they're a win now team. Giannis is like, look, man, like we just got put out in the first round.
Mm-hmm.
So we're trying to get back to the finals and we're trying to win championships. So I think for Milwaukee, they had to go for a big swing like that. Mm-hmm. They didn't have to really part with anything. I mean, they gave us some role players and Jrue Holiday. I mean, Jrue is an all-star player, but I mean, to get a guy that averages, 32 a game. Yeah. I mean, it's, that's, and he's coming off his best shooting season of his career, which is wild. I mean, considering, everything, but I mean, he also had, 71 points last season in a game. So
that whole thing.
So now, you got two guys that average 30 on the same team. Giannis averaged 31 and 12 last year, and Dame averages 32. And I think that's a career best for him as well. So it's that partnership is interesting. And like I said, we'll get to the rest of the trade and we'll grade that and we'll discuss that in a second. But like when I look at the trade, I'm kind of, in Portland's case, I almost feel like they did the best they could because I like the haul they got back as opposed to what they would have got from Miami. What do you think about that?
Oh, they honestly, I mean, Portland, a lot of people were giving Portland a hard time about the way this was being handled.
Yeah.
But if we're being honest, the move that they made with Milwaukee and subsequently with Boston helped them out a lot better than I think anything that they would have potentially gotten from Miami, because Miami was playing outrageous hardball, and I can't blame them. I mean, there were a lot of assets that Portland wanted, and I don't blame Miami for not wanting to give them up. So they had to move on from Miami. I think that Milwaukee came in really sneaky with it because I mean I think after Miami, really the only other team that we were hearing on a regular basis was actually Toronto. So I was surprised when Milwaukee popped out. And I was even more surprised when I saw that it involved Jrue Holiday. And the big reason for that, of course, I mean, we weren't expecting them to keep both. But what really surprised me there is you're giving up, granted, I understand, we all know, we all know the mantra, offense sells tickets, okay. But you gave up arguably the best defensive point guard in the league. And that's kind of where I was left scratching my head, is because that's a big void to fill, especially when you look at Jrue's size. Jrue is a bigger guard. Even his teammates have described him as being built like a linebacker. Right. So I think giving that up, I mean, it's no knock on Dame at all, because we all know what Dame is capable of, but we also know what he's not capable of. And we're not going to see Dame out there, 40, 45 minutes locking down your best player if that's your point guard.
Right. And I just think that they kind of doubled down on the offensive part. But I think given the moves that Milwaukee made, in the offseason, I feel like they kind of positioned themselves to where they were able to make up for the defense they'd be losing to an extent somewhere else. Because I mean, if you look at the projected lineup right now, I mean, I'm looking at what they got right now starting possibly. So you'd have Dame, Malik Beasley, Chris Middleton, Giannis, and Brook Lopez. Mm-hmm. So, and we talked about this before we came on. You got Splash Mountain as a 3-and-D guy. You got Middleton as a 3-and-D. Malik Beasley's a 3-and-D. Dame is just 3, and his name starts with D.
Provided Middleton can stay in one piece. Fingers crossed.
Right. And so I feel like you have enough defense around Dame to kind of cover the deficiencies now, because Beasley is another guy you could probably throw, like Jrue Holiday, you could probably throw him on, 1 through 3. Mm-hmm. So he would have some switchability there as far as defense. So I think Milwaukee did a good job to kind of, they made that move once they got Malik Beasley. So I feel like that's an opportunity for them to kind of cover for Dame more. Because if they didn't have Malik Beasley, suddenly you're looking at, what, Pat Connaughton maybe starting?
Yeah, which is what
Cam Payne?
Yeah, and Cam was an addition a little later, and I mean I feel like he could help, but no, if I had my choice, I'm putting Beasley up front.
And it could have went even worse, because I mean, I think they re-signed Jay Crowder, and Middleton can play the 2, but he'd be oversized at the 2 at 6'8".
They'd take advantage. I mean, it's
right, because Crowder is not good enough, I don't think, to be a starter at this point in his career. I think the last him, not playing for Phoenix and then coming to Milwaukee and not really hitting,
pretty much doing the same. Yeah.
Right. I think that might have hurt him a little bit there, but going forward, I mean, just looking at this, I mean, the other parts of the trade, we talked about Portland. Obviously, I think they got the biggest pull back in this. Now you look at it, they get DeAndre Ayton. They have a big man rotation now. So I mean, they have. I mean, you look at their young core now. They got Ayton, who's going. This will be year 6 for him. So you got DeAndre Ayton, Anthony Simons, Scoot Henderson. You also have Malcolm Brogdon and Jeremy Grant. That's your 5. Like looking at that, that's a damn good 5.
I'm
starting out in the West. That's not bad.
What I like the most about everything that Portland has done is knowing everything that was going on in Phoenix with DeAndre Ayton. Now you still have a young star in Ayton that, just from based off what we've seen so far, is finally somewhere where he feels like he's wanted and somewhere that he feels like he wants to be. Right. And I think that's going to be really big. I think that could be something that causes some problems. And even outside, look, we let's look at some others. We got to consider, I mean, the team is actually, they're young, but they're a lot deeper than people realize. They just drafted Chris Murray, who, I mean, if Keegan's any implication, I mean, that was a snatch.
Right.
Kevin Knox is still on the roster. And
For whatever that's worth.
Oh, hey, I mean, given the roster, I feel like he can do something. And just like we had been talking about with I was seeing a breakout possibly from Matisse.
Right.
I you know how much I was talking about him when he was in Philly. Like I feel like he was one of those that didn't get talked about enough. So I think that Portland is the perfect place for him too, to kind of just fall into his own and really be what he wants to be. So
Right.
I think that the moves that they made easily set them up for the future, given how young a lot of these guys are.
Right.
And it's also one of those rosters where we're not expecting you to be a title team right away. There's still so much room for growth, but there's plenty that can happen.
So let me ask you this, because I have my opinion of where I feel like they could be, like best case scenario. So where do you feel like this puts Portland in the West? Like, are they about to be kind of like the Houston Rockets, where they just have a lot of pieces and a few like intriguing guys, and they're still terrible? Or do you feel like they'll be kind of like OKC, maybe not last year, but a couple years ago, where they had pieces and they were competitive, but they were like just bad?
Yeah, I was definitely gonna say they're not gonna be last year's OKC.
Mm-hmm.
I would say best case for this team. I feel like I I would say absolute best case. Honestly, I don't see them being a playoff team yet.
Mm-hmm.
I really don't see them being a play-in team just yet. I I would say best case they could possibly make the play-in, but then lose.
Right.
I don't see them making the postseason. I could see them potentially losing in the play-in.
Right. I feel like with that five, and you know, we'll finally figure out if Chauncey Billups can do this at a high level and see if he can really coach this group up. But I feel like they're kind of OKC from like 2 years ago. I feel like they could be
Mm-hmm.
very competitive, kind of around the play in, maybe not make it,
Mm-hmm.
but because I don't think they'll be better than, say, like a New Orleans. And
Right.
after seeing how Karl Anthony Towns played, you know, in preseason, the first game against Dallas, I feel like if he's gonna play like that, like aggressive and going to the hole the way he was, like
In that.
if Cat has like that mean streak now, Minnesota is they're gonna be tough right there at that kind of in
And
that bottom half of the West, maybe middle of the pack in the West. So
yeah.
like that play in area is gonna have some teams that we don't expect. I expect Utah to be maybe in the play in.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Yeah.
you know, like Portland is in that mix. I think Houston could jump up and make the play in. You know, if things go right for them. I still feel like they got a lot of questions, but
Definitely.
but
Yeah, Cat.
yeah.
Yeah, even going back to what you were saying, Cat's one of those guys where I got to be completely honest. He's one of those guys where preseason from him to me means absolutely nothing.
Right. I mean, he's been in the
I
league too long, you know.
yeah, preseason to me, and honestly, it's like that with a lot of guys with me. I mean, but
Right.
he's definitely one of them. Preseason to him, with as far as his performance in preseason, it means nothing to me. I want to see how he looks, in December. I want to see how he looks in January, because I feel like this is typical Cat that we're getting. Like, we see that he wants to do it early on, and
Right.
then within the first month of the season, we're seeing the same old guy that, spends more time complaining and, trying to get refs' phone numbers than actually doing his job. So it's definitely a wait and see for me. If anything, I'm more excited to see the growth from Anthony Edwards.
Right.
Yeah, Cat, we'll see. Rudy, we'll see. I'm excited to see what Anthony Edwards is going to do if we're talking Minnesota. Um, but yeah, I do agree. I mean, Portland, I think Portland has a world of potential, but I still feel like there's a little something there that's missing. They're going to have to fill that roster out a little more. And I mean, all these guys are young. They're gonna need time. Just like
So
any young roster, they're gonna need time.
so let me ask you this, and then we'll get to the other teams in the deal. But
Mm-hmm.
do you feel like with Portland, they have a legit big man rotation now, even though, you know, Rob Williams has been hurt? But I
Mm-hmm.
mean, you got two legitimate centers with DeAndre Ayton and Rob Williams. That's your five right there.
Mhm.
And then you got Simons and Scoot. Do you feel like
Don't forget
Portland
Shaden Sharp.
and Shaden Sharp, like, I mean, it's a good team,
Mhm.
with good, like young talent as far as good team in that way. But
Mhm.
like, do you feel like do you anticipate a long rebuild, or do you feel like this is a team that could be in the playoffs sooner rather than later?
I would say sooner rather than later, because I feel like they could be that team where once other players see the potential, you might have not necessarily superstars that flock there, but you might have those guys that say might be like a six man somewhere else. I mean, the Malcolm Brogdon, prime example. You might have those guys that shine somewhere else, and they're like, maybe I can do this on a higher scale over here. And I think eventually they'll build up that way. And that's where I see a lot of them being like an OKC, because they're, clearly not at their final stage yet. And I think that once people see how these young guys work together, there would probably be some vets later on that still have something left in the tank that are like, I want to go work with that.
Right.
So I think the sky is the limit for them right now.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Now, we can shift gears. Obviously, we mentioned Jrue Holiday not staying in Portland and getting
Mm-hmm.
shipped to the Celtics, who've been pretty busy this
Mm-hmm.
offseason. They've brought in a lot of different guys now. So looking at their side, they got Jrue Holiday now to pair with Jason Tatum, to pair with the newly paid without a left hand Jaylen Brown. They got Kristaps Porzingis, in a deal as well. So with Boston, adding Jrue Holiday, I feel like point guard was kind of that area where I felt like they were lacking. I mean, I think we talked about that, kind of maybe around like either the playoffs or like the finals, like our first year, when we were talking about, like, we felt like point guard, like Marcus Smart was basically their point guard, but I feel like he was kind of out of position in that
Mm-hmm.
role. Like he did a good job, but he wasn't traditional. I felt like he was more of a two playing the one,
Right.
and he was more of a defensive. I felt like everybody else was, Tatum, Brown, they were the decision makers with that. But
And
like
that's
now, I mean, you have a legitimate point guard with Jrue Holiday. So what's your outlook on Boston with that now?
I mean, anybody that listens already knows it hurts my heart to say anything positive about these green guys, but I honestly can't help it. Just like I was saying, I feel like the only team that could possibly have like an asterisk or a question mark in this trade is still, in my opinion, Milwaukee. And the reason I say it's not Boston is literally what you just said. Jrue Holiday is an ultimate upgrade to losing Marcus Smart. Marcus Smart, again, one of the top defensive guards in the league. You ship him out. We wondered what was going to happen there, and now we know the answer. I think that Jrue Holiday is going to be, I'm not even going to say the perfect replacement. I'm going to say he's an upgrade. Because like you said, he's bigger, he's stronger, and he's more adapt to actually playing the position while still bringing that defensive intensity. I think that alone is going to make them worlds better. So, as much as I hate to say it, no, Boston is definitely still going to be among the cream of the crop in the East going into this season.
Yeah, I'm wondering now, with Porzingis joining the front line, there are questions with Boston, and my question mainly is the front line. I mean, now your front
Losing
line,
both Williams gone.
right? So Grant Williams is with the Mavericks, which we'll get to them at some point down the line, not in this episode, but front line. I mean, your front line now is Ancient Al Horford and Porzingis. Now, granted, Porzingis was pretty healthy for Washington last year and kind of had a resurgence. It was one of the best years of his career. Finally looked like the unicorn again. It took him a while to kind of get his legs back underneath him after some tough stuff with the ACL that lasted, I think he missed like 2 seasons.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, so he's finally healthy. It gives them an option I feel like they haven't had. I feel like he gives a lot of what Al Horford does. He's just 7'3". I think his ability to stretch the floor and kind of be a 5 in that lineup and be kind of that trailer, I think that's going to be really dangerous for Boston, because because KP, that's one thing he can do. I mean, he's unblockable at 7'3". So if they use him for just what his strengths are, and he's shooting the threes and in transition and taking advantage of mismatches, I think he gives them an option I feel like they haven't really had. But I think Jrue Holiday, like to your point, he gives them a capable and versatile defender that can also get you 19, 20 a game. And Marcus Smart was more of like, y'all, Jalen, you and Jason Tatum, y'all take the shots. I'm gonna just guard.
Just like when we were covering the finals last year, there was one episode where I said that exact same thing. I think it might have been, it was one of the first 2 games of the finals, I want to say, where Marcus came out and was just getting buckets.
Right.
And one of the remarks I made, I was like, if Boston is going to depend on him to do that, they're gonna lose the series.
Right. Because that's just not like what he's out there to do.
Right.
He's kind of a sometimey shooter.
Yeah.
It's like,
that's not even, and that wasn't even to say anything negative about him, of course, like that. But just like you said, we know he's not out there to be, one of your offensive dynamos. So if he does do that, it's tremendous, but don't go out there expecting that, because you more often than not will be left wanting.
Right. And I just think Holiday really just shores that up. And I mean, now you look at Boston. I mean, 2 years ago they were in the finals.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, you're looking at that and you're like, okay, like here we go going into this season. They've leaned into, we were talking about the weird overlap between Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown.
Right.
And now they've leaned into that. Both those guys are paid.
Right.
Jaylen Brown, is getting $306 or $304 million.
Man,
something like that. And I think they said in the last year of his deal, he's gonna make like $69 million.
Yeah.
And that's for it. Yeah. Shout out to L.A. Knight. If you ever listen to the JWJ podcast, just know we're big fans.
Oh, they should know from the opening.
There's plenty of wrestling references. You guys know to expect
definitely.
But yeah, so looking at Boston, I feel like they've gone all into the Tatum Brown tandem. I feel like adding a player like Jrue Holiday really kind of will enhance what they're able to do. I feel like that you won't have as many issues with Jaylen Brown and the turnovers, I feel like, because Jrue, you actually have a guy that can run the show and get people in the best position.
That's what I was just about to say. Jrue takes pressure off of both of them.
Right.
Part of the reason they were overlapping is because there were a lot of things that Marcus Smart could not do. Right. So a lot more fell on the two of them. Now they have a guy that is a proven player, a champion that can help them lead the way. So Jrue is going to take a lot of the stress on a daily off of Tatum and Brown. And I think that's going to be big for them. And I like, as much as it hurts my heart, man, the East better look out. If that team stays healthy, they better keep their eyes open.
Yeah, for sure. And I think honestly, Boston, man, kudos to Brad Stevens, because for Milwaukee to trade Jrue Holiday and then immediately Boston's on the phone like, hey, what's up?
Mm-hmm.
You literally took. So if you're Milwaukee, you're like, oh, yeah, we got Damian Lillard. We had to part with Jrue Holiday.
There we go.
Boston, being smart.
Finish my thought. Come on.
Literally grabbed up the one guy.
Yes.
Who, if you do remember, back when Jrue was with the Pelicans, shut down Dame.
Yep.
That happened in a playoff series earlier in their careers.
There it is.
So they saw y'all's Dame Lillard, and we're just gonna snatch up the guy that could stop him and add him to this core that's booming and this roster that's 2 years removed from the final.
Hey Jrue, hey
Jrue, hey, said Brad Stevens.
Oh,
but
boy.
So that brings me to my last point with Boston. I want to get your point on this, James, because there was a lot of talk after Boston lost to Miami.
Okay.
Or what it was, Miami, right? Or Philly?
Conference finals. Yeah,
conference finals.
Yeah.
So they lose to Miami, and immediately the question was, is Joe Mazzulla the guy? A lot of people had Joe Mazzulla getting fired, right?
Yeah.
So when I look at that with Tatum, with Brown, now Jrue Holiday, with Porzingis, like they've retooled the roster. So now, if they don't, get back to the finals, which this move probably could put them in the finals. You can make that argument. Mm-hmm. If they don't at least make the conference finals with this team, I mean, is Joe Mazzulla the right guy? I feel like that's a question you have to start to ask.
And in my honest opinion, it has to be at least conference finals again. Right. Only reason if I'm in the front office, of course we always want the gold, but if that wasn't to happen, I think I could at least deal with conference finals right now. One, depending on how the team performs when they get there. Right. Now, let's say you go there and get swept, we have a problem. Hi, Lakers. Let's say you go there and get swept, then we might need to talk. But let's say you go there, it goes 6, it goes 7. Given, we are still kind of unsure of what the front court is going to look like. And, especially with, we have those two guys, like we have a Porzingis and we have an Al Horford who have dealt with injuries for the better part of the last 4, 5, 6 years. So knowing that, I think that I think that I wouldn't be surprised if Boston is not finished trying to do something to boost the front court.
Right.
And 2, I think that the biggest thing is going to be seeing if Boston can stay healthy. If those things get in the way, there's only so much you can blame on the coach.
Right.
So, but I think team stays healthy, they're clicking, and then they get to the conference finals and they end up looking like Philly. Hey, Harden. They end up looking just disheveled, like they just look like clueless deer in headlights. Then I think we might have to look at the coach.
Right.
But leaning on it right now, to me, if Boston does not make it to the finals, it's going to be, one, because a team like Milwaukee is just clicking a lot better than they are, or 2, they couldn't stay healthy enough to get there.
Yeah. So the question I have now, and then we'll get to Phoenix. Last question: If we're talking Celtics, if their ceiling, if not the finals, is definitely conference finals. Mm-hmm. If it's Bucks Celtics in the conference finals, who goes to the finals in your opinion?
I feel like the series is definitely gonna have to go long, because I feel like the team's strengths and deficiencies kind of overlap.
Mm-hmm. I feel like Milwaukee has more firepower. For sure.
Yeah. I feel like Milwaukee has more firepower, but then another big thing also is, like I said, I feel like this is where that defensive aspect is going to turn in, because even if the offense is rolling, let's say that you have Jrue going off, you have Tatum going off, you have Brown going off, and I'm still just not 100% on the health of Middleton, especially that late in the year. And I think that missing him, we already saw, this past postseason, missing him matters. Of course, they were, missing this big Greek guy too, but
I think that's honestly a big part of why they didn't get farther. I just felt like not having Giannis and then Middleton not being in the lineup too. I just feel like by the time Giannis did come back and play, it was just too late.
Middleton is a groove guy, and once he comes back, it takes him a while to kind of get back to where he, likes to be or needs to be. And in the postseason, you don't have time for that. So that's a big part of what did Milwaukee in. Of course, you have the Giannis injury. Team is going to rally around their superstar, so that hurt them. And then, when Chris Middleton goes down, Chris Middleton is basically, one of your defensive anchors. And that ended up hurting them too. I know a lot of people, shout out to Miami. A lot of people wrote Miami off super early. And Miami, and kudos to Eric Spoelstra, they were able to take advantage of all of those gaps. And I think that a team like Boston could do the exact same thing. So Chris Middleton plays such a big part in that team's success, and unfortunately, just as big a part in their shortcoming.
Right. I feel like, turning the question back to my side, if both of those teams are in the conference finals,
my bad. I don't even think I really answered. It hurts my heart again to say, but just because I don't want to sound like, he's only agreeing. No, I think I would go Boston. I'll say that. I think it would go kind of long, but I'm going to say Boston I'm going to say at least 6.
I'm going to go Bucks. I'd go Bucks in 7.
Okay.
Mainly because
does home court matter? Does home court matter in that?
No. I feel like it would go to 7, and then Dame would hit a shot and put the Bucks in the finals.
Is Jrue going to let him do that?
It'll be over Jrue. It'll be over Jrue for the win,
bro. Oh my goodness,
that'd be the ultimate redemption. But
the only satisfaction to me would be that he's doing that to Boston. But proceed.
Yeah. So that being said, we're gonna go from one part of the country to another, and this will be the last team involved in the group. So we got Phoenix, and Phoenix, they go out, they get Yusuf Nurkic, they get Grayson Allen, Nasir Little, Keon Johnson in this deal. Now, that's just part of what they've been able to do. They've added some veteran guys. They added some intriguing role players. But, ultimately, you got Phoenix. They got Frank Vogel as the new head coach. Right now, I mean, if you're looking at the 5, they signed Eric Gordon in the offseason, signed Yuta Watanabe. They're kind of in a weird spot. I mean, they got Bol, who they took a flyer on. They still have Josh Okogie, Damian Lee. Mm-hmm. Now, if you look at their 5, I mean, you're looking at Kevin Durant, Devin Booker. They traded for Bradley Beal. They got Nurkic and now Eric Gordon. That's your 5 right now. So, looking at that trade, man, when you come to Phoenix, I mean, I have my questions, but James, I'm gonna kick it to you first. With Phoenix and the moves they made, getting Nurkic, getting Brad Beal now, adding some pieces to the bench, what's your outlook for Phoenix? That's a team that's looking to, make the next step in the West.
A lot of the team is so fresh. I think the biggest issues that we're gonna see when it comes to Phoenix are chemistry, depth, and who the hell is your point guard? I mean, let's be real. Your big 3 are 3 guys that we know are damn good at putting the ball in that basket, but who's bringing the ball up the floor every night? Is it going to switch out? What's going to happen? What are they all seeing the floor? There's so many questions that goes into this Phoenix situation, and to me, again, that's going to be the only problem, is figuring out. Because you also have to understand that being the ball handler on a team is an added duty, that's added stress, and eventually that can diminish minutes as well. Because if you're that guy that's going to be tasked with that, you're not going to be out there for 45, 47 minutes a night. You're going to have to cut back on that to be able to do your job. Do you take those minutes from Devin Booker? Do you take them from Bradley Beal? You're definitely not going to do that to Kevin Durant. So who's it going to be? That's where the questions have to start. Who's going to be your point guard? Who's going to be making those point guard decisions on your team?
All right. And my question with that, and that was the first thing I thought when they traded for Brad Beal, is once Chris Paul was gone, my thought was, okay, who's the point guard now? Mm-hmm. Now, the thing that makes this intriguing, but also kind of sketchy for Phoenix, is both Beal and Book, both guys have experience kind of being that lead guard role. The problem is when both of those guys played that role, primarily for an extended stretch of a season, they were freaking terrible. Both teams were. Phoenix was winning between 17 and 20 games. Washington was as irrelevant as they could ever be. So it's like, and it's crazy because both those guys still scored a lot of points and their teams weren't going anywhere. So now, if I had to sit there and look at that five I mentioned, KD, Booker, Beal, Nurkic, Gordon, if I had to look at that group and say, okay, who's the point guard? I think it has to be Devin Booker. I think because he's kind of, I mean, he's outside of Kevin Durant, he's their best player. I mean, he's
definitely.
I think he's the one that has the best two-way potential as far as being able to defend while also being a great scorer. I feel like, you know, him having Brad Beal there is going to allow him to sacrifice some where he doesn't have to get 30 every night.
Right.
Beal could be there to fill that in. He could get 30. Kevin Durant can still get, 25 in his sleep. So it's like, I feel like Book and Beal can kind of handle that job. It's just going to be a matter of, how well does that work given that none of those guys are natural point guards. Now, another question is, obviously we know about Booker. He's a much improved defender the last couple of years.
Right.
Brad Beal's had that reputation, but I mean, being in Washington, he hadn't had to guard anybody for a while now.
Well,
so then it becomes
nobody did.
Right. Nobody did. So, then you have to ask yourself, okay, who plays the defense for them? I mean, they have some personnel, Damian Lee, Josh Okogie, like Grayson Allen can be dirty.
Hey, we're gonna give him another chance. We'll say gritty. We'll try to give him,
Man, you tripping. Anyway. No, but like you just gotta ask yourself, if y'all like that, you got to comment tripping down below on YouTube. Put that in the comment section.
Yeah, you almost made me cough. It felt like you stomped on my chest or something. Damn, bro.
But anyway, I don't want to talk about Ted Cruz. But anyway, just sitting there looking at it, man, it's like defensively, it's like, okay, Grayson Allen, all jokes aside, I mean, he's a guy that can, hit some shots, play some defense. Yuta Watanabe showed what he could do kind of as a 3-and-D kind of guy, at 6'9". So I think him kind of stepping in at that 3-4 spot off the bench might give them some wing depth. But again, these are guys that have kind of went around. I mean, Watanabe kind of broke out with Brooklyn last year as a 3-point shooter, showed he could be fearless and try to, be kind of a shot blocker, rim protector guy at 6'9". But I mean, everybody else is, Okogie kind of like him a little bit as a wing defender. But it's like a lot of these guys, they were on bad teams. Damian Lee could do something, but I mean, he kind of got his time when Golden State was bad for that year. Bol
definitely took advantage of it.
And Bol is the ultimate kind of, I won't say like cheat code. He's definitely like the biggest question mark because it's like, there's a reason that he didn't play in Denver. There's a reason that when he went to these other places, he was just kind of tantalizing and never did anything. For one, low motor, doesn't compete very hard. Like he only plays kind of one end. He just kind of coasts his way through games. I feel like he's got to play with a little more energy and purpose if he's on the court. I just feel like that's the only way he's going to see real minutes in the NBA.
And hopefully, and hopefully this is the situation that does it. Because remember, we talked about that over the summer, and then we started seeing him, like over the summer, just seeing things that he was doing. And remember the remark I made, I was like, I feel like on one hand, it definitely is, the players got to show that they want it. They've got to show that they deserve to be here. And I feel like he's not the only one. I think a lot of times if you're just in a situation where it's just not working for you, eventually that desire dies. And in Bol's case, it was unfortunate because we saw it so early. But even another example in Orlando, I feel like before he got traded, we saw the exact same thing with Aaron Gordon.
Right.
And then Aaron Gordon went to a better situation. He got around players where he felt like he fit better, and look what he's doing now.
Right.
So I think that's a big part of it. And that's not to take the responsibility off the player, but I think that I think it has to be, a symbiotic thing. Ooh, science word. It has to be, they have to work together on it. Like it's also the coach's responsibility to get these players going, because at the end of the day, they might not feel it every day. So come in here and motivate me, make me want to do it. It's not all on the coach, it's not all on Bowl, but you are gonna have to show that effort. Phoenix is another opportunity, and it very well could be the last one for him to prove that he has something to give and that he's ready to give it.
Yeah, and I mean and you're right. I mean, you're looking at a guy with Bol. I mean, 7'2", can handle a bit, shoot the ball. He's got the Bol bloodline, so he can, he's got the shot blocking, he's got the length and that kind of stuff from his dad, who was one of the tallest players ever.
Right.
So it's like, I think you got to think about the coaches he's played for. He played for Mike Malone, couldn't get off the bench.
Mm-hmm.
You go to Orlando, Steve Clifford?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and these are offensive minded coaches.
Right.
And he's an offensive minded player and couldn't get off the bench.
Mm-hmm.
Now you go with Frank Vogel, who's a championship coach and who's a defensive oriented guy. If he can get Bol to buy in defensively and to play hard every night, they might have won that sweepstakes off a scratch off. Because like he's got all the talent. He just has to get the fire and the passion for it. Because there's a lot of guys in the league that are kind of like that. Like they have a lot of offensive ability and they want to play the way they want to play. And if they can't play the way they want to play, then they're not invested. Right. Shout out to Christian Wood. But, like C Wood, but man, like, you got to be more about like the team than like your own shots and your minutes. But anyway, I got a couple more questions with Phoenix. I mean, like, making the move, getting rid of DeAndre Ayton, moving off your number 1 overall pick from that draft.
Which that right there is another prime example. Not to put him and Bowl on the same level. I'm interested to see how Ayton looks, and I mentioned this earlier. I'm interested to see how he looks now that he's in another city with an opportunity to play for somebody else. Play in a different city, play with different guys. That's clearly going to shift his responsibility. So let's see what that turns into for him.
Right. And I'm interested in, them bringing in Yusuf Nurkic. Like, he's got to be the starter at that point, as your 5-man. So, how does he fit in within that system and the other guys that are, very much offense first? Mm-hmm. So it's like, we started to see a little bit of, what he could do when he was in Portland, as far as he kind of became, if I had to think about a player that kind of played a similar style, he was kind of in a Andrew Bogut kind of role with Portland, kind of toward the end, where he was kind of this offensive hub where it was like, get me the ball at the elbow and let me kind of do some playmaking from the elbow. Like he could, shoot a little bit and do that kind of stuff.
Yeah, super random. I just double checked it because something wasn't sitting right. Bowl was actually in Orlando just from 22 to 23. So he was actually there under Mosley.
So yeah. Like
Clifford had left. Clifford left the year before he got there.
Right. And that's another guy that, Mosley, another young coach with some potential, but it's like, you're also on a team where it's like, okay, Orlando's in one of those spots right now where it's like, for the lack of a better word, it's like, shit or get off the pot. Like, how long are you going to be bad?
Yeah,
it's true. It's like, how long are you going to be that team that has like every 6'11" player in the league that can do all these different things, and then we don't have anything other than, oh wow, they're fun. How many games they win? 23. Oh, like how long are we gonna sit here and deal with that?
Right.
So to me, it's when I look at Phoenix, it's like, okay, you got plenty of veterans in that starting 5. Got some guys, got some young guys with some potential.
Mm-hmm.
But you also have a big question mark in Bol that I feel like he's going to have to play some real minutes. And if he if he shows that he's not a guy that you can rely on for 22 minutes a night, then Phoenix might be screwed, because you're gonna need that big man play as you get deeper in the season. And Nurkic, I mean, there's no guarantee he's gonna be healthy because he's got a history of injury. You know, we got to see how he fits in with that group. Kevin Durant is gonna probably miss 15, 20 games.
Right.
You know, last year they had wasn't it last year when Book got hurt for a while?
Yeah.
Yeah, so he was hurt. Brad Beal's not a picture of health either.
Mm-hmm.
So this could go either really well for them or really poorly.
Mm-hmm.
So it all just kind of come down to health and how the pieces fit. But I think, you know, the question now, you know, is with Phoenix, like, where does this move? You know, because everybody thought them getting KD was like, you know, going to shake the world up, and it didn't really do much. But, you know, looking at
you want to talk something random. Well, so we're talking about Frank Vogel coming in as the head coach, which I think tons of potential there. Of course, you know, I'm biased, you know, shout out to that quote unquote, you know, irrelevant bubble championship. All of y'all can kick rocks. But did you realize Monty Williams left Phoenix with a 628 win percentage, right?
Mm-hmm.
The last coach to leave Phoenix with a win percentage over 600, it should be pretty obvious.
Over 600?
The last coach to leave their tenure in Phoenix with a win percentage over 600.
Mike D'Antoni?
Mike D'Antoni in 2008.
Yep.
Since then, they have gone through Terry Porter, Alvin Gentry, Lindsey Hunter, Jeff Hornacek, Earl Watson, Jay Triano, and Igor Kokoshkov, bro. And the best win percentage out of all of those was Terry Porter, who couldn't even crack 55.
Yeah. hopefully, you know, Matt Ishbia actually takes this to another level, because this is also like his first full season owning the team.
He's made it very clear he ain't afraid to pay for it.
Right. So yeah, it Phoenix, you know, if you look at like where does this move push them in the West, I still don't think they're as good as Denver.
No.
I still don't.
Given the chemistry issues, they're just not deep enough.
Right, and I don't know if they're better than L.A. So I think they're probably like third, fourth in the West right now. Because I mean, you got to think, okay, well, the Clippers might be there, but some of their players might not. So it's like you just don't know with them. So I think it's Denver. I think it's LA. I think it could possibly be like Phoenix. And then, you know, then you get to like the Dallases and those teams. Memphis, gotta throw Memphis in there as well. So
yeah.
And Memphis might be, you know, they might be right around, you know, where they'll probably drop down a little bit.
They're definitely going to drop down a little bit, because last year they were what, second? Was that last?
So,
yeah. They're gonna drop. Right. A lot of new pieces, a lot of, you know, some important parts left. They're gonna drop.
Right. So, you know, with that being said, man, first episode, season 2. If you made it this far, we want to thank you for making JWJ a part of your day. If you're not already, make sure you follow us, like, and subscribe. If you're on YouTube, give us a like, you know, give us that thumbs up. We need that. Make sure you subscribe, hit that notification bell to be notified whenever we put out a new episode. As far as podcast only, we can be found on almost every platform. We're on Anchor, we're on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, and more. You can find us personally on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter, or X, or whatever you want to call it. You know, we can find us on all those at the JWJ podcast. If you'd like to follow us individually, you can find me on Instagram at It's a Thomas Thing. You can find James at Titletown's Mayor. Also, we started talking about this last season, but if you have any questions or would like to weigh in on our conversation, shoot us an email at the JWJ podcast at gmail.com for a chance to be included in a future episode. So with that being said, thank you guys again for making JWJ part of your day. We're glad to get season 2 off, and we look forward to the season. James, what do you think of this first episode, man?
Oh, man, it's picking right up where we left off, man. Look, once they find out what the acronym means, which we'll get to that, but they'll understand that shooters shoot. When it's like riding a bike, once you get the stroke, it doesn't leave you. So I'm excited. I mean, this is a good time. Again, I know we've been talking about getting back on it for a while, and I'm glad we finally have the chance to make it happen. I mean, I'm glad you're settled in. Everything's, going well. The job's off to a good start, and we have the time to do it. Yeah, it's a blessing. So it's good to do it again. It's good to talk to you. It's just good to be here, bro.
Thank you guys for listening. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for listening to JWJ.